Hello and welcome to In the Kitchen with Mary Mac. Today it's rhubarb pie, which everyone hates. But I'm hoping you try it and maybe you'll love it because I have a pretty good recipe for it. So let's get to it. Rhubarb is a fabulous thing. Loved by Italians and Alaskans everywhere.
And it's a delightful word, just spelling-wise.
If you listen to Prairie Home Companion, they even have a beautiful rhubarb song, which I won't sing for you, and you'll be so thankful.
There's also a Monty Python one.
Oh dear, forgot about
Rhubarb
that.
Tart song.
Yes, well, we won't be singing the Rhubarb Tart song also, so I'm sure everyone will be happy about that. Rhubarb's a really great thing. I'm not sure if it's a fruit or a vegetable, though, so it could go either way. It looks like celery. However, it develops seeds on the outside of the plant. It has seed pods.
It is an alien life form.
It's an alien life form that Italians seem to thoroughly enjoy, and I'm not sure about everyone else. The Amish like it. Grows wild in Alaska, and it's a good food, and I think it's good for you. I'm just assuming that because it's a plant. If you have rhubarb and you never use it or you get it from someone, a few things to remember. The leaves,
if you live in Alaska and it grows wild in your yard.
Right, if you live in Alaska and it's growing wild and you're like, what can I do with this stuff? The leaves are poisonous, so you don't want to use those. Okay? When you pick rhubarb, you don't cut it off. You very gently pull it out of the ground. And if you hold on to the base of the stalk, gentle pressure, you'll pull it right up. It works really well. You trim the leaf off and you trim the bottom off and you have a nice big stalk of rhubarb. It can be all the way from very red to a sort of a celery green with some pink overtones to it. So there's several different varieties of it, and I think it's getting pretty popular again. But I'm going to give you two rhubarb pie recipes today. The traditional Italian rhubarb pie that we all know and love, which is a rhubarb custard pie, and the normal pie that probably everybody else would eat.
So it's a good thing you're Italian or you'd never get away with these kinds of remarks.
I know, I'm slanderous. I'm terrible. So, either way, this rhubarb pie would require a single crust, both of these types of pies, and I recommend using the pat in the pan recipe that I had mentioned in a different podcast when we talked about the House of Pies. It's from the Betty Crocker cookbook, and it's called the Pat in the Pan crust. It uses 1 1/3 cups flour, 1/3 cup of oil. I use canola oil, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 2 tablespoons cold water. So you mix your flour and salt together. You stir in your oil, and it all soaks in to the flour, and stir that up. It'll kind of break up into little balls, and then you add 2 tablespoons cold water and toss it around with your fork, and it'll form a ball. It'll actually form a dough ball, and then you just take that and put that in your pie dish and press it down and up the sides, and it works really well. It's pictured in the Betty Crocker cookbook. The directions are all in there, and I highly recommend it. I really love that cookbook. I'm sure that Julia Child probably wouldn't approve of that, but it's a lot faster. But this is a good crust for this particular pie. The first pie we'll go over is the regular standard rhubarb pie. So if you make your crust, just get your crust in there and get it ready. What you want to do with your rhubarb, you want to wash it, but don't, for goodness sakes, let it soak in water because it kind of explodes. It looks like fireworks at the end. You just want to wash it off, wipe it dry with a paper towel. Usually it takes, depending upon, I hate to even say it, you're probably going to want to use about 6 cups of chopped up rhubarb, and you want to cut your rhubarb into 1-inch long pieces, okay? So you're going to take your rhubarb stalks, clean them, wipe them with a paper towel, cut them into 1-inch pieces, and you're going to want to measure at least 6 cups of rhubarb. I've used as many as 8 cups, however much you want to use. And you're going to take 1.25 cups of sugar and 1/3 cup of flour and mix them together, and you're going to pour that over your rhubarb chopped up and toss it in that and let it sit until the juice starts to pull out of the rhubarb, because what you want that sugar to be partially dissolved when it goes into the oven. It really helps a rhubarb pie for this to happen. But that works really good with mostly any fruit pies. It's a good trick. It distributes the flour and sugar throughout the fruit evenly, and it helps to draw some of that juice out for your pie. So, nothing fancy here. You've got your rhubarb. You're going to toss it in 1.25 cups of sugar and 1/3 cup of flour. and let it sit for a second. You've got your pie crust ready. Now you're going to make your topping, and your topping is going to be a half cup of softened butter, a half cup of sugar, and 1 cup of flour. And you put that in a small bowl and take a fork and just cut it into itself until you have something that resembles crumbs, and that's going to be sprinkled on the top. That's your topping. This is so good on a rhubarb pie because rhubarb is so tart. You want you want a little something extra sweet there to kind of cut that tartness. And I don't use a lot of sugar. A cup and a third sounds like a lot, but that's not a lot for rhubarb. And I've even taken it down to a cup. If I felt that the rhubarb was a little on the dry side, I might use a little less sugar in it because it's usually not as tart if it's dry. So now you're going to you want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. And then you're going to put your rhubarb that's been sugared and floured, and you're going to scrape that into your pie plate that has a crust in it, and get that all in there, and then you're going to sprinkle the crumble topping over top of it. When the oven is preheated, you're going to put that pie in, and this is what I do. I put the pie in the center of the oven, rack in the center of the oven, pie in the center of the rack, and put a piece of foil, shiny side up, just set a big piece of foil right over the whole pie. Because what that does is it allows the inside to heat up and the crust to not burn to a crisp. Some people like to just cover the crust, but I like to do it this way because it just, I don't know, it gives that whole top a chance to not be burned to a crisp. So, so you're going to leave that foil on for about a half hour while the pie is baking. Set your timer for a half hour. Half hour, take the foil off and give your pie a half turn in the oven there and let it finish baking. You want to bake it for 45 minutes, or this is how I tell a fruit pie is done. When the syrup in the pie, the juice of the fruit and the sugar and flour will form a sort of a syrup, and it will start to bubble up, and you can see it. When you see that coming up out of the crumb top or out of the crust, you know your pie is baked well. So when you see that, you're going to take your pie out and allow it to cool, and voila, your regular old American rhubarb pie is done. The pie that people always say they hate, but then they taste it and they actually love it. And they say, I can't believe this is rhubarb. Is this really rhubarb? Are you trying to trick me? And I say, no, I'm not trying to trick you. And I always think, wouldn't it be funny to use skunk cabbage and actually trick people? But I haven't done it. So, but people like this pie that don't like rhubarb. And I've given it to quite a lot of people who say they don't like rhubarb. They end up liking it. Now, the custard pie. The custard pie, same thing. You're going to have your crust in the pan. You're going to set your oven, though, at 425. Because this custard has to not only set up itself, it has to set up with chunks of rhubarb in it. So, you're going to want 1.5 cups of sugar, 3 tablespoons of flour, an 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Mix that together and beat 2 eggs into it. Okay, so 2 beaten eggs, and I would use at least a large egg, if not an extra large. So two nice size eggs. You're going to beat those up and mix it in with the sugar, flour, and salt until you get like a sort of a pudding consistency there. Mix it up well. Then you're going to add 3 to 4 cups of cut up rhubarb. And these pieces of rhubarb, I would prefer to have them cut about a 1/2 inch. They're going to be cut thinner because they'll cook better that way. And small rhubarb works better in this. So if your rhubarb is a smaller diameter, it works really good in this pie if you do that. So 3 to 4 cups of rhubarb that has been cleaned, like I told you before. Clean it, wipe it off with a paper towel, and you're going to cut it up into 1/2 inch pieces. And you're going to mix that in with your custard. Mix that well, and you're going to pour that into your pie shell. This particular pie takes about an hour to bake. So you pour that in and let it bake. Now, if you are a person who likes meringue, this is a really good pie to put meringue on. Meringue is tricky, and a lot of people don't like to use it. It's also a good pie to not have meringue on. So it's good with whipped cream. Once you take it out of the oven, you're going to want to cover the edges of the crust with foil on this pie because it's 425 for an hour. And of course, a custard pie, the way you test it for doneness is you insert a sharp knife into the custard, and if it comes up clean and it parts evenly when you cut it, then you'll know it's done. But this pie, if you allow it to cool, to room temperature. You don't have to refrigerate it to cool it, but if you allow it to cool to room temperature, it's very good as is or with some whipped cream. But if you like meringue, you're going to want to do about 4 egg whites, beat them up frothy. You can add a pinch of that white stuff that escapes me right now, cream of tartar. Put a pinch of cream of tartar in it and beat those egg whites up until they begin to hold stiff, not too stiff, because your oh my God, I cannot talk. Your meringue. But anyway, you're going to want to use 4 egg whites, a pinch of cream of tartar, beat that up. Some people put sugar in their meringue. You can go either way on that. I usually don't, because I've noticed it kind of tends to weep more if you put sugar in it, but it's also good if you put sugar in it, so however you want to do it is fine. But beat up your meringue, and the way to do meringue is you want to start piling your meringue at the edges of the crust first, and I would do that about 45 minutes into baking because it takes your meringue a good 10 minutes to bake itself. But pile it around the edges, touching the pie crust, and work your way into the center, and then put it back into the oven and let that bake along with your pie till it's nice and brown. And then you have a delicious Italian-style rhubarb custard pie. They're both they're both really pretty simple. And if you remember having rhubarb as a child, but you haven't had it in a while and you think you might like it, you can use a purchased pie crust. So it's not, I do that all the time because ever since I started baking bread, I can't make a pie crust to save my life. I'm just terrible. I overwork it. So, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. And this will come out to be you'll really enjoy this pie. I can absolutely know that you'll enjoy this pie. Give it a try. See how it is. And good luck. Thanks for listening if you did. And if you didn't, too bad for you.